At least no one can see your two genders tattoo, Marcus. You were telling me about last night.
Uh,
Good take, guys.
so we're around the round table. The good take guys have assembled to discuss modern politics, society, the world, specifically the views of Harry Potter author and crime fiction author under a pseudonym, JK Rowling. Some of her controversial opinions have come back sort of in the news, so we thought we would sort of discuss them, and specifically a video sort of rebutting them. So, what do you think of her controversial decision to back Scottish Remain? Budumfish. Okay, that was not the.
That was like a tumbleweed.
That was
That
terrible.
was like tumbleweed. That was a terrible
You
joke.
tried. That's the important thing, I think.
Yes, I think because I didn't actually think of how to word it before saying it, just went sort of straight into it. But no, that's not what we'll be discussing today. We'll be discussing her, I suppose, the transphobic views that she's spouted on sort of Twitter. I don't know if she's sort of said any sort of new ones, or it's been brought by this letter that she's written, and people have brought sort of older ones to you. But anyway, people are sort of discussing it again, and we thought it'd be a good idea to discuss that and a video. I suppose that'll be in the description of that Lindsay Ellis did in response to that, and sort of some of the viewpoints that have been brought out from that. So none of us disagree with our pro JK Rowling in this debate. So we won't go into the whether trans people are people or what the arguments are against it or pro or any of that, because we've already sorted that. And I doubt anyone who is a good faith argument of that would listen anyway to this. But there's some interesting things in the video that I think are good to sort of point out. And I thought one of the ones that'd be good to sort of open up on would be, there's a bit in it where she talks about how JK Rowling herself will be trusted more than sort of healthcare experts and sort of people who actually know what they are talking about in relation to trans issues, because they have medical experience and aren't just a author of children's books. So I was wondering if what, because I'm not on Twitter. What is sort of what do you two think the sort of the law is to people of these people who don't actually understand anything about the issues that they're talking about? They're just sort of random celebrities. And sort of what even the allure is to follow somebody who is not even like with Twitter and stuff. Obviously, you can just spout off sort of your thoughts. There's nothing that you have to actually discuss. It's just a platform to post anything with the sort of character limits. Like, what is the actual law of following J.K. Rowling, and sort of why anyone would sort of believe the opinions of a celebrity over the opinions of somebody who knew what sort of they're actually thing that the sort of video brought up. So to the floor of the good take, guys, I suppose.
Well, that's a very good question. I suppose it gets to a certain point, right? Like, I still follow JK Rowling on Twitter. And I know in all good
Burn the heretic! Burn the heretic!
I know, yeah. I know in all good conscience that I should have unfollowed her the minute she started spouting her transphobia. And I literally have no intellectual way of defending why I still follow JK Rowling on Twitter when I know in all good conscience that I absolutely should. I mean, I'm actually on it right now, just looking to see if she has posted anything in the interim since a lot of the kind of the controversy started to show up. And yeah, the last thing she tweeted, besides from her bizarre sounding new children's book she's been publishing online, she posted an article about detransitioned women. So women who have it came out as being trans men, but I wanted to go back to being women, being viewed as women, and it's like the reaction is constantly, is this the hill that you really want to die on? Like, everyone is, well, not everyone, but a lot of the internet is against obviously what J.K. Rowling's doing. it sours the broth of a series which means a lot to a lot of people. Uh, and yeah, no, I mean, for my view, I absolutely should unfollow her. But, if I no, I'm going to do it right now, actually. You're hearing it live on air. I'm going to click a button. I'm just going to unfollow.
Hey.
And that's it. There
Yay.
we go.
Peer
Live.
group pressure.
Yay.
Peer group
Done.
pressure.
Now, if you can sign this letter denouncing your previous following.
I'll sign this non-disclosure letter. Yeah.
Who said
No,
cancel
it's one of them where
culture
like
isn't real?
yeah. But no, but those are pretty much my immediate thoughts on it. I don't think in good conscience. Like some people follow, for example, like Donald Trump, for example, to see what shit he posts every day, or someone like Graham Linehan, who actually got banned from Twitter the other day, which is good news. For spouting transphobia hate. It's almost like a moth to a flame. I think you're kind of curious about. Well, I'm certainly curious about what these horrible people have to say and how further down the depths that they can go. But at the same time, you've got to think, well, I can't keep this person with the numbers, because then you think about all the, the more the wider the network is, the wider the hate and wider the horrible hot takes kind of go essentially. Really the goal should be to get the tick taken off J.K. Rowling's name. Really, if enough people unfollow her, then maybe we could do that. But I don't know. I mean, what's your take on it, Heath?
Well, yeah, you were saying that like people following Donald Trump and sort of bringing it back to like one of the things that Marcus was just saying is that like there is a purpose to following Donald Trump other than like if you're following J.K. Rowling, you're most likely following her because you want to see what she continually has to say about Harry Potter. So you're not on her Twitter to hear her hot takes about trans people. Whereas like with Donald Trump, like with Donald Trump, like he is the president of the United States, so there is stuff that he does put on his Twitter that is like pertinent information to know outside of potentially just consuming a product. So yeah, I think that
It'd be pretty hard to deplatform Donald Trump as well.
oh yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Well, apparently he's not allowed
Like
to
he
block
could just
people.
use
So.
the official Opus Twitter if he wanted.
I mean, but there was like a weird period of time as well where a lot of people kind of started to follow J.K. Rowling on Twitter because she was fairly anti-Brexit. And she kind of got political for a bit. And at first, people kind of liked how she was kind of taking on a lot of these kind of like, big figures in politics. And I think she kind of got a lot of followers because of that. And then the transphobia stuff started to happen, and that was kind of all the political goodwill I think that she'd built up is kind of deflated and gone now essentially.
Yeah, but yeah, I think that yeah, this. See, I'm of two minds as well about like what what we were talking about with like you Marcus said like that the celebrities talking about things and then like and people not listening to like medical professionals and stuff like that. I sort of don't want what I want to sort of say is that I don't think that a celebrity necessarily has to sort of shut up and sort of keep in their lane or whatever. Like they do have the right to basically express their opinions and that sort of thing. But I think, and this was in the Lindsay Ellis video, is that like if you have a large following, you have more of a responsibility to ensure what you are saying is correct, because this can affect the lives of like other people, whether you like it or not. So, but I don't understand why people would necessarily listen to JK Rowling over other people. Like for me personally, I can't come to like terms with why would you go, okay, this person must know about transgender because she wrote a series of books about a wizard. Like it doesn't like it it doesn't make any sort of sense in my mind. Like, if it was something that she had expertise in, like obviously you would listen to her opinion, but that's not where her expertise lies. So I don't understand why anyone takes what she says any more seriously than any other person saying it. Like, that is unqualified.
I think for a huge part of like kind of why people maybe like would like listen to J.K. Rowling is I think maybe from like the fan perspective, right? Harry Potter has a massive LGBT fan base. The narrative of Harry Potter itself is essentially a coming out narrative, right? Harry literally comes out of a closet
Yeah.
to become a wizard at Hogwarts, right? And I think it's really easy to see why people who are maybe like unsure about, if the gender that they've been assigned is the correct one, or maybe if your sexuality is not heteronormative. I think you can see why people would engage. I think in like those stories because yeah, the narrative is literally a coming out story, right? And I think that's where like a lot of the hurt comes from because it's seen that J.K. Rowling, from the subtext, was on the side of kind of a lot of these sort of communities, and he thought she'd take a fairly leveled response to it. And like again, at first, I was talking about the kind of political discourse about 2016, 2017, and J.K. Rowling seemed pretty well, fairly switched on to what was going on. A lot of the hot takes about Brexit were kind of roughly aligned with how I felt about it. It's almost like a form of what's the word? Like grooming, really. You know what I mean? I'll get them in with this, and then boom,
Yeah.
transphobia appears, and I think it's kind of similar to the way a lot of like right wing YouTubers, would kind of spout their beliefs and their views. To kind of get people on their side, I'll lure them in with like a video game topic, and then bam, homophobia, transphobia, and that's how you get suckered into. I think a lot of that sort of world and a lot of that discourse.
Yeah, I see. I sort of like. I suppose based on what you were saying, there's a sort of there's an implied intentionality of it, basically. So
Yeah.
yeah, but I don't think that is the case with Rowling. I think she basically this is, and I was talking to someone about this last night. Was that I think it might be like I think it might be like COVID related slightly because I think that this is probably something that she's had sitting in the back of her head for like ages. Like
Yeah.
she's gone down the sort of, I suppose, the pipeline towards this like transphobia herself. But like I think that like it's always been sitting in the back of her head, and then basically, but she's always doing something, and that sort of thing. And then this whole COVID thing happens, and she's at home for like 3 months, and that thing that's in the back of her head finally like has space to actually grow and that sort of thing. And I think that's where this is sort of all coming from. Like it's probably something that she only kind of thought about previously, but now it's like she's like, this is this is my crusade that I'm going on. I've got to protect the women's, but not those women's. These women's, like, so
Yeah, they're not those women. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
I have to protect. I have to protect certain women and the good name of my take on feminism, which
yeah,
obviously plays into the way that kind of um, turf society, turf groups
yeah.
work.
I
Um, yeah.
I didn't ask this at the start. I thought it probably should have been a bit of housekeeping. Just seeing as like most of the like major turf people are British, and both of you are British. Are either of you turfs?
Unfortunately.
Yeah. Actually, that's a sort of like, it does seem to be the case that like it is a very sort of British thing. Like the big voices in it seem to be like from the UK. Like, do do you have any idea why that would be the case? Like,
I mean,
Why they're all British?
no,
I mean,
why?
I've got a couple theories, but I've got a couple theories, but obviously we've not heard from Marcus in a little bit, so maybe I'll field it to him for a little bit.
Um, I genuinely can't imagine why they're all British. Maybe it's like an upper class thing because the sort of class system here is so sort of stratified. There do seem to be like a lot of the same people who do the whole like facts and logic kind of stuff, which seems to be a very British sort of answer to everything. So I imagine it's sort of I imagine they're kind of people who would be the same kind of people who'd have like a picture of Immanuel Kant on their Twitter bio or something, or would sort of try and argue themselves to be like the intellectual class of bigotry, I suppose, which I suppose isn't as big in, because I'm assuming that what you mean is sort of in the English language sort of media, because we probably aren't seeing many sort of French or German or whatever you want to say TERFs, because obviously their work won't be translated into a language that any of us can read. But I imagine that part of it will be that like the sort of cultural clash in Britain tends to be sort of like upper class people writing in stuff like the Times or something, or the Telegraph or stuff like that, like these sort of high Tory papers and stuff. Well, in America, you tend to have more of sort of the people who are seen as sort of bigots tend to be seen more as sort of rural, sort of idiot kind of people. So I imagine that it's sort of something to do with that, even though because I've not got like a big thesis of it, but I think that probably plays something sort of into it. What's your take on the issue, Chris?
Well, I mean, I think there's like a couple like factors to consider in here. It's I think from our British perspective, it's kind of that kind of there's a strong kind of culture in Britain of you look after your own, and you kind of stick in your lane and you stick to what you know. And I think amongst intelligentsia, I think there's a certain kind of like I think there's like a proudness that you're an educated person and that you kind of know what you're talking about. But when you get an idea, with a lot of people in Britain, when you have an idea, it's hard to get like an alternative take on that idea and take it on board and listen. And you see that kind of quite a lot in a lot of more intelligentsia circles. It also doesn't help, but there's quite a popular website in Britain called Mumsnet, which is like a hot hive of scum and villainy. It's a hot hive of transphobia. It's one person's described Mumsnet is to British transphobia what 4chan is to American fascism, which that's a quote from a guy called Eddie Miller. And it's kind of interesting how feminism in the UK has kind of it's gone that way, and especially when I think a huge part probably comes from the British media as well, where the British media is so terrible and so manipulative towards acts such as this. And when our left-wing newspaper, it claimed to be a left-wing newspaper, The Guardian, posts transphobic articles, that intelligentsia who is really proud to be intelligent, you can see how some of them would be sidled into kind of siding with, well, if something like Guardian saying this, then I should align myself this way. It's a very much like an us and them kind of attitude in Britain. I mean, would you agree, Marcus, about that?
Yeah, I'd say that's pretty accurate. Yeah, I think the media sort of is is the big part of it, which I think though and all like part of it is I don't know why it's specifically British, but obviously you get these debates every few years about where about a sort of minority subgroup, which the sort of papers. I think one of the things over here is that there is sort of a newspaper industry which is so biased and will sort of pick up on any sort of cultural issue. And I think that one of the reasons why trans issues have become bigger recently is because it used to be obviously, gay panic, and then there was marriage was legalized, and sort of the Tory party kept that. That's sort of like just mainstream now. So it would be hard for a newspaper to be anti-gay rights now. Obviously not impossible, and they still are to a degree, but it would be harder than it would have been before. Now that sort of it is just the mainstream with sort of everyone. Like obviously even gay marriage itself, which isn't even the same as gay rights, that has like massive majority polling towards it. So I think that basically when you solve one issue, it's like doing the whack-a-mole. So when you solve one issue, then another one comes in its place. And sort of trans issues are kind of perfect, really, because they, like it has sort of some of the sort of homophobic fears. You might have to piss next to a man if you're a woman, or vice versa, or stuff. It has some of the same sort of fears that people might have about gay rights, but you don't have to then say it's about that. And obviously there's also masculinity thrown into it. So I think that because when one thing gets like and all like in earlier times it would have been these black thugs in town in cities and stuff like that would have been the scare thing. So I think the reason why is because the most popular, again though, no, with the news, like in America, like the most popular newspapers are like liberal ones or ostensibly liberal ones, like the New York Times or things like that won't have as discursive viewpoints on cultural issues. But over here, the more popular ones are just right-wing tabloids. And I think that basically they're using the trans issue as a way to start newspapers, because it is a hotbed of, you can just do opinion piece after opinion piece, which is significantly cheaper to do than actual reporting where you have to send somebody to investigate stuff. So I think that the reason is because it's a good way to sell newspapers and divisive opinion, really, and it's a lot cheaper to do than proper reporting for the media. And because of the way our media's run, it's different from America. And as I say, I think other countries have different languages, so we won't hear their transphobia.
So
And I think the way as well, like, sorry, I was just gonna say, I think as well, stuff like the way like kind of misinformation spreads like on like Facebook and Twitter and stuff. I remember having to deal with a story which multiple people were spouting about how like a tampon company over here was removing any kind of reference to like feminine stuff, and people kind of saying like, well, tampons are only for women, and it's like, well, no, like at certain points in transitioning, trans men still have periods, right? Like I mean, we need to consider all the different viewpoints and different genders and people who are transitioning from being women to men. Uh, and yeah, I saw that go around loads, and it was like, oh, well, what do you mean? No, tampons aren't for women anymore, and it's like, no, you idiot. But it's like it's the lack of education, I think, as well. Like I don't know. I know a couple trans people, but I'm not too clued up on the education side of it, and it's something that I do consciously try and do. I try and read and listen to as many viewpoints as possible, and that needs to change as well. I think over here, to kind of combat that. And I also think a huge part of the transphobia in Britain is the spectre of stuff like pantomime. Like Britain has a massive history of pantomime. Men dressing up as women, and it's a bit of a laugh. And it's like, it's changed so much since then. But I think that spectre hangs over a lot of stuff. The legacy of pantomime and drag and that sort of stuff. And I think that's all that some people can see. Just men dressing up as women or vice versa, and we can see that. This is a really important choice about combating against the gender that's been assigned to you from birth. So yeah, it's a bit of a mess, to be honest.
I was just going to say thank you for those extensive answers, but the correct answer was Jermaine Greer. So you both...
The Australian, isn't she Australian?
Yeah, she is. but only the people in the UK would listen to us, so
Britain fucking up as normal.
But yeah, I do think that like obviously like I think that I make a joke about Jermaine Greer, but I think that like I think her that sort of rhetoric did take hold in the UK because she was pretty much one of the first major feminist figures that was basically going on the trans exclusionary train. So, and it is interesting that like that did take hold in Britain, and I think it is for like all of those reasons, like the way the media is, like education, all that sort of thing, and it's like, but yeah, it's just I just find it like really odd that it's like it does seem to be this like really very British thing. Like it doesn't like you will find these people in other areas, but the concentration seems to be a lot higher in Britain.
Well, I think that's because, yeah, like we have these, like it's because of the terrible. Like you could actually probably make a good career just writing transphobic opinion pieces for various newspapers. Really, like I heard a joke once that Britain's economy is sustained by its opinion writers for newspapers, and I think that there is a bizarre like the idea of the news in this country seems to be not just sort of reading like the facts of what's actually happened, but it's also all these opinion pieces and sort of stuff like that as well. So that's probably the reason why we've got so many trans folks spreading their opinion through the newspapers over here. But at least though, with Jermaine Greer though, like obviously her opinion is wrong, but I think she at least is not like just somebody who's written a children's book. Like I could understand why people would listen to her more than JK Rowling. Like to go back to sort of why anyone would care what her opinions are on trans rights and things. Like again, though, it just seems bizarre that somebody would care what her opinion is. And I suppose it's weird now because I suppose that with Twitter and stuff, it's liberated. I suppose if you were writing in an earlier age, you would have to be interviewed about the book that you'd written and sort of what issues came out sort of from that, and your opinion would be filtered through the actual work that you'd done. Like most interviewers wouldn't just randomly go to someone like, "Oh, what is your opinion on trans rights?" just randomly in an interview. But I suppose now with Twitter, like it's sort of gotten rid of the link between somebody expressing their views mainly through the sphere of their work to just being a famous person who's done something who can then spout off about theoretically anything. And again, I agree with what you were saying, Heath, that if you've got a big audience, I don't think that JK Rowling should not be able to say what she wants, essentially. But I just don't understand why people should, like, find. I think it's more the view that, like, the people are to blame to some degree. Like the fact that they're like just listening to her because it reinforces her point of view, even though she's got no evidence towards it. Like to some degree, the people who are listening to her and taking it on board, despite the fact that, as it says in that Lindsay Ellis video, the actual evidence that she's putting is like Medium articles, and it's stuff that anyone who had a brain would look at and would know that this is not correctly sourced, or it's just opinion basically, but they're not filtering through the opinion to the facts, really.
Yeah, she's someone who kind of does that whole like, uh, I have friends who are trans, but here's this awful opinion piece, you know?
Yeah, I would say it's sort of got something to do with this sort of like whole thing that we have of like this sort of like the cult of the billionaire. And like you see it with like Elon Musk and that sort of thing. Like, these people have a lot of money, so they must be smart. They must know what they're talking about and in every single sort of aspect of life. Not realizing that, that these people are very, the reason that they're billionaires is because they have a very narrow set of skills that they have been able to monetize and exploit people to get, their billions of dollars. So, but I think that there is that sort of aspect within people that they think that because these people are rich, they must know what they're talking about, which is ridiculous. But yeah, like I wonder what those, like, the same people that would listen to JK Rowling for that reason, whether whether they would be just as happy for her to be like performing heart surgery on them or something like that. Like the you know
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like there's absolutely no it is as ridiculous to listen to her about anything really that's not to do with children books than it is to do with if with her doing sort of open heart surgery. I think as well that to some degree people must be assuming that it's just an opinion based thing, or that it's a feeling based thing, rather than that, as we've said before, that there's factual based evidence. Because I suppose that you wouldn't, and I suppose all her being a woman as well probably adds to it. Like you wouldn't, I don't know, like Black Lives Matter or something. I think that if she was talking about, the experience of, if she'd said something that was like men against women, black people against white people, I think that people would see that as racist, because she's figuring it as, I'm a woman and these people are saying stuff against women, which again they're not, but I think that it's seen as slightly different, if that makes sense. I think that it's not seen as something where there is a scientific consensus by people who are ignorant of the issues. Yeah. Again, I've just sort of said it without sort of thinking it through before, but I don't know. It seems odd that people would. Again, though, this is the issue, isn't it? That like we're talking about Jermaine Greer being one of the first sort of feminists to go against trans. It's like creating a totally arbitrary, not really there antagonism between trans people and feminists. Like TERF itself stands for Trans Exclusionary Feminist, as if that the two opinions are in some way against each other. Like it is like the definitive sort of divide and sort of conquer thing, that creating barriers between two groups. That, like, there is no real reason feminists should be against trans people. It's just this ridiculous divide which has been sort of imposed by, like, there's no reason, like, JK Rowling, obviously as a rich woman, should feel threatened by anyone because of, again, they're not taking away her femininity as well. I don't know, it seems strange that people have this opinion, if that makes sense.
Well, no, it is strange, because like the whole central tenet of feminism, gender is a social construct, right? And you should kind of work to be aware of these kind of gender constructs which have been created from us from birth. So then, to me, the natural next step of that is conflate it. Like, well, why can't gender be interpersonal, and why can't it kind of swap and change, and you can essentially make who you feel you are. I think what some TERFs object to is the fact that I think with trans women, what all our trans women report is that, like, they're more comfortable doing more like not stereotypical female looks, but you know what I mean, like they feel like they can more easily transition and be accepted as a woman if they go for these certain tenets. And TERFs object to that for some reason. It's like they object to kind of going to more traditionally feminist feminine looks, and it's just always strange to me. I'll never understand TERFs, because, as I said, for me the natural next step of something like feminism is the whole idea of you can be the gender you want to be. There's nothing wrong with it, and I just don't get TERFs at all, to be honest.
Yeah, well, I don't think you'll hear any.
You'll hear any objections to that, yeah.
I think in all that, a problem is as well that because people are because obviously you've got like the idea of sort of free speech is supposed to be that the argument in favour of it for everyone, which I would agree with, is that you get to hear what your opponent believes, and then you can argue better against that. But the problem is that because JK Rowling doesn't really know what she's talking about, she's not even putting across like the best. Because I think the ideal of what you would do to solve sort of this issue in a society would be that you would get the best, most well-arguable transphobic opinion, and then you would argue that against like the best non-transphobic opinion, and then people would see which one was the more rational one. But because it's based around sort of this, because she's a big celebrity, she's almost the face of TERFs in a way, rather than somebody who would sort of try and make a sort of good faith argument about it. So again, it's not even you're not even seeing sort of somebody try and make a, and also I suppose the problem is that like we don't have any, like, you know, at an earlier period you may have had, say the BBC, which could have had like the majority of people watching it, and then you could sort of see a debate going on in sort of real time, and there's not a one source to go to see sort of a debate between people about issues really. You're just seeing various different people argue with each other online, and then sort of most people probably aren't. I genuinely don't think most people, to be honest, even are aware of the arguments or care or anything. I think most people just want to get, you know, I don't think most people have an opinion sort of either way, if that makes sense. I think that most people probably don't, because they are a minority as well. Most people probably never even met a trans person, or don't consciously go around with any opinion at all. But I think that the problem is now that the people who are spouting off sort of opinions online, the ones that are biggest are people with the biggest platform, who don't tend to be the people who have the most reasoned opinion on it, because their platform's not related to their opinion on transphobia. So it's hard to get sort of a national sort of conversation going, kind of thing, because there's not like a recourse to get two people with the best argument to sit down, sort of debate it, and then sort of go from there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, there we go. I think as well the my microphone. I muted my microphone so I could light a cigarette. But yeah. What the thing is like you talk about like you know, having people on like a platform like the BBC or blah 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 to debate this sort of thing. Like not really even a thing that really needs to be debated, but anyway. But like, if you had two experts on there, no one would watch it. Like, just no one. Like, probably people who are like very pro-trans and people who are very anti-trans would probably watch it. And more than likely, neither of those parties are going to be like swayed in that debate, and it's the people in the middle. Like, it's sort of that you need to have these conversations where the people are, and I don't think like I think that like this sort of thing on social media is good in a way, but it's also bad. Like, it's good that like it's a conversation that is happening out in the open and people can contribute to it and that sort of thing. But also, Twitter is the single worst platform for any sort of nuanced discussion. So like,
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so I think that like, you know, we need something that like people will be interested in when we're having these sort of discussions, but also have like a decent platform for people to actually have these discussions on. And like, yeah, as I said, Twitter is not it. Most social media is not it.
I think though, if you did have, well, it's quite hard to tell, but like the BBC, like before, like it had so much competition, did used to put on sort of topical shows that would discuss like debates of the day that would be viewed by sort of millions of people, and not just people who cared about what the opinion itself was, because obviously there was less to do, so you would just do it to try and be an engaged sort of I suppose this is the problem with all sort of news stuff, isn't it, really? That people, you know, there are people who will just filter it out, kind of thing. But I think that there are people that would, maybe they've heard some of the debate around transphobia and want to make their own sort of mind up. I don't think it would just be people who have already, like, there must be surely people who are, you know, maybe they've heard some of the debate one way and some of it the other way, and they're trying to think what their opinion is and would sort of be engaged to do so. It's quite hard to tell though, because there's so many different distractions now and sort of stuff to do that you don't have that thing where it is. The reason why I said BBC is not necessarily just because it's the BBC, but because like at the time when it was sort of hegemonic, people would just watch anything that was on there. So it would more of a national, or you would I suppose the thing that's sort of different now is that people don't feel like they need to have the like, you know, there is no sort of national debate or something, or where you would have like one thing that people would talk about afterwards in the way that they used to be previously, when you had like a book or a film or a TV show or something like that that would be sort of the discussion point with regular people, because they would watch something to try and feel sort of engaged with everyone else. Like, I think that's kind of gone now, which makes it harder to discuss sort of certain sort of topical issues in one go. Like, you know, you might have had something like Emmerdale, obviously it's crap or something, or Coronation Street, it's rubbish. But like, you know, big thing that would then have like, I don't know, like the first time they would have had a black character on would have been like a big, you know, national moment, because it's something that gets watched by like a quarter of people, because, you know, they've only got such a low amount of options and stuff, and then that would be like a discussion point, and it would sort of change the national sort of conversation. But obviously that's harder now to do, because everything is so atomized and people have so many different entertainment. I don't think that's necessarily better, because again, they are just, people shouldn't be forced to watch crap that they're not interested in. But then the flip side of that is it's harder to get people interested in sort of one debate, to get you can't get a plurality of people anymore. You can get much smaller audiences for more niche things.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what I was saying. But yeah,
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, it's one of them where, like, you know, and, you know, whenever they kind of, you know, try to engage in the discourse or try to go for a bit of diversity, you know, it kind of backfires. It was on I was sick to death of hearing about this about a few months ago, and it was when it was celebrity. What's that show called? Stuck in a Jungle. What's it called? Marcus,
I'm a
you might know.
Stuck
You
in
know,
a jungle sounds good.
yes.
celebrity stuck in a jungle. Our celebrity, get me out of here.
Oh,
Is that
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. They had a trans person on there on the last show, and like it's clear why they put her on there, and it was literally, you know, because like people can laugh at her, you know. And it was horrible, like, you know, it was like, you know, it's all this shit was like being spread around, and what was it Caitlyn Jenner? That was it. Yeah, Caitlyn Jenner. Yeah, um, yeah, she was on the last season, and like, you know, it was, you know, great, you know, a bit of diversity to, you know, to the people who've been selected, and it's also that's going to be consumed by a general public, and you know, this is your chance to get um, a trans woman on there, and she was essentially, you know, put on there, you know, because people could just laugh at her, you know, and it was horrible. I was sick to death of having to engage in that conversation with people. It was like it was horrible, you know. And like I said, this was the chance, and you know they messed it up.
yeah. I like that's. Say what you will about Caitlyn Jenner. I am not a fan. But
The same, yeah.
yeah, she's not. She shouldn't be mocked for being trans. You know, she
Yeah.
can be mocked for many other things. Like,
Many other things,
yeah,
yeah.
like, you know, being trans is like the easy shot. Like, come on, like,
Yeah, right.
put a little thought into it. But yeah, it does seem to be this sort of and it is something that sort of will just comes back to education and people knowing about it and stuff like that. Like, I was having a conversation the other night with some people, and they were talking about uh, one of these guys that they knew going out with a trans girl, and one of the women there was like, you know, he's not straight. And I'm like, at that point, I piped up and I was like, why isn't he straight? Like, he's dating a trans woman. He's like, has he dated guys? Like, outside, like, you know, but I think that that person there, they weren't trying to be transphobic. They just didn't sort of know better. They just assume that,
Yeah.
you know, because the person's trans, that means that their partner automatically is gay or bisexual or whatever. And it's like, no, that's not how it works. But I think like a lot of people sort of need that sort of, education on like these what it is and what these issues are, and like how it all works. Not how all of it works, but like just an idea of like what gender is, what sex is, what how these things interact, how they don't interact, how society works with gender. Like it seems like a huge thing, but it is a fairly sort of simple thing to you know um, to give people a baseline understanding of. But I don't think anyone is actually getting that baseline understanding, and that's one of the bigger issues.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right there. I will ultimately not besmirch someone for being like that, but rather take a stance of like, well, maybe you should, maybe read this or maybe have a think about this in a slightly different way because, it is a big, education thing. But me and Marcus have fairly, similar, kind of similar backgrounds. I don't not entirely sure what yours is, Steve, but like, for me and Marcus, we grew up in small towns in the middle of West Yorkshire, not exactly the most diverse place in the world for this sort of thing. And it really wasn't until like university when I started meeting, kind of more gay people and started meeting trans people, and it was especially with the trans thing. For me, it was like I've never, obviously, I've been kind of gay people before, but for trans people, it was like a whole new thing for me. At first I couldn't quite get my head around it, but as like most things, at the end of the day, trans people are just that. They're people. And you listen to the stories and you listen to the experience and you try and learn and grow and you learn and you educate yourself. And, then you want to try and spread that. You want to try and get people to see that, at the end of the day, trans people are people. They're struggling just as much as anybody else, if not worse. I know definitely worse in a lot of aspects. So, yeah, it's that education thing. I think that's what's crucial. And avoided the British tabloids. is This is also a very close second, but the number one side is the education side and trying to engage. I think.
Yeah, and I think as well, yeah, like the thing is that a lot of people, if they've not actually met somebody, as you were saying, who is trans before, then they're not going to have any reason to, it's not going to factor into their life really and stuff like what they're going to sort of look into and do. I think the more that you give more opportunities to sort of trans people, and the more that they're in sort of more people's workplaces and stuff like that, then they will. And the more they're in people's communities as well, they'll sort of get more experience, and they'll sort of. It's same as anything really. Like that's sort of the way that sort of racism sort of declines as well when people actually meet the people that they've sort of previously demonized and stuff like that. Like just the more interaction people have, then you hopefully like historically would sort of bear out as well that the actual occurrence of transphobia will decline the more people actually meet sort of trans people as well.
Yeah, I think it's like the other thing, and like you're talking about this, and you're like, oh, like the thing is you may not even know that you've met a trans person, basically.
Yeah, yeah, that's a very good point, actually. Yeah,
yeah. So there may be people out there who are just like have gone their whole lives. They've known, well, maybe not someone their whole lives, but because I feel like at some point it would come up. But there might be someone that these people have worked with there, for a while and just have no idea that they're trans, and that sort of thing. And that's one of the things is like a lot of people kind of also, and you see it a lot with like anti-trans people. Like there's constantly these things that they have that they're like, this is how you tell someone is trans, and it's like it's like really, really like stupid shit that is like more likely to affect like cis men or cis women who say are like say cis men who aren't as masculine, or cis women who are more masculine, and that it's more likely to affect them than like trans people, which is one of the like weird things like with this whole JK Rowling thing is that like a lot of the shit she says in there is like is more likely to hurt like cis women whom she's saying that she's like there to protect, like and you know there was an interesting video like ages ago from this guy in America when they were having the bathroom issues, well, still having the bathroom issues, but you know that bathroom debate when it was at its peak. There was this trans guy who was basically using women's bathrooms, and every time he went in there, like the women were like, "What the fuck are you doing in there?" Because he looked kind of like me. He was like a big, like bearded guy, and yeah. So and he's like, "Well, I'm a biological female, so you know I should be in here." That you know, but that's the type of thing. Like you know, this. And then when you look at it from that perspective, like, okay, so a guy like that, I'm not saying he's a predator, but then like what is it's like the reverse of the argument that they have is like, well, a guy can just say he's female and go into the guy can say he's a woman and just go cis the women's toilet. Like a cis man can do that, but like that means though then like a cis man can also like the reverse can just say, yeah, I'm actually a trans man. I'm not a I'm you know I'm not a cis man. I'm a trans man. So I can use the women's toilet as a you know a biological female, and there's no way that they can know this. Like it's this insane sort of logic that they have that just doesn't like make any sense to me. It's like just let people do what they want. Like, I don't know. How many times have you been attacked in the bathroom, guys?
Daily, pretty much, you know. It's less in COVID, obviously, because I'm using my own bathroom, but not necessarily. It's not like it doesn't happen still. But
it's then.
I suppose actually another thing about when you. But another thing about why Britain, I suppose, has actually got probably more trans codes is there is actually legislation over here which is to sort of defend trans people. I don't know if it's the same in America, so I suppose there would have actually been an impetus a few years ago and more recently to actually write these articles. I know America probably has, because they've been ruled by Donald Trump. Like, it's bizarre though, because America in many ways is actually significantly more transphobic than Britain. Like, there's been so much transphobic legislation that Donald Trump has actually enacted. Like, aren't they banned from the military now in America, or from certain parts of it?
No, I think that was like.
I'm sure that's.
I'm pretty sure that was that he sort of was like they're gonna be banned from the military, and then the military was like, no, what the fuck is wrong with you? But I know for example that he has that like you know Trump has rolled back a whole bunch of stuff in regards to like LGBT healthcare and stuff like that. So like yeah, there is a ton of stuff in America where it is like you know explicitly like systematically transphobic, and I think that like. That's, I suppose, you know, that's the, I suppose I suppose the difference is with America, they can be a bit more out about it. Like, they can just say, you know, I don't like trans people. Whereas I suppose in the UK, there needs to be this sort of veneer of liberal values. So it's like, I support trans individuals, but I'm, you know, there to protect women and feminism. So I suppose that's probably like the difference. There's less need in America for people to be like, you know, couching it in sort of this liberal ideal. Yeah. No.
Well, just looking though at the Trump transgender ban, just because it's so interesting, it looks like so yeah, he basically said that they were going to ban transgender people from serving in the United States Army, and it says last thing that's reported on it, Supreme Court approves the ban. It's again, it's so confusing because there is all these different courts in America where they could take it to. But it does seem like it did actually pass with very little actual people actually talking about it. This really like President Trump versus what is it now? Hold on a sec. President Trump has said the ban is based on financial reasons and not prejudice against people who are transgender.
Yes,
which has got a bit of gallows humour to it.
That very underfunded department in the US, the army, yes, the military in the US, very underfunded. They can't afford hormones. They need to buy a tenth of a jet.
Jets don't come cheap, kids.
But yeah, I think that the again to get rid of that there, but yeah, I think that's probably one of the reasons why it's bigger in sort of Britain. But I think as well that like the reason why I think Twitter is sort of bad for the debate and why JK Rowling especially filtering around her and getting her sort of having to go at her as a sort of specific person is that it's not sort of getting like it was interesting hearing the ideas that you'd sort of put about that some people put forth and so. But I think that the problem is that because JK Rowling again she doesn't know what she's talking about won't actually present any ideas that can sort of be rebuffed and stuff like the stuff that she sort of said seems to be just sort of rambling nonsense and stuff that's not like something that people can then again because she's not an expert on it or doesn't actually know what she's saying then it's not the kind of thing where you can but again it's such a complex issue now because there is nothing really where you could get the majority of people to look at arguments and sort of ideas rather than everything's so filtered through sort of people and stuff. It's not like you can then just present the ideas, rebuff them, and then sort of go on from there. We've actually spent ages talking about just one small aspect of the thing. So I was going to I suppose another one that's interesting with J.K. Rowling is because obviously Harry Potter is a kid's book. Do you think that she has more of a responsibility to not express the opinions to people who may not actually, be intelligent in? I don't want to sound ageist, but maybe an 8-year-old can get the ideas behind it. Or do you think that because it's rather than the book, it's like I've never actually read Harry Potter. I've seen most of the films, but I doubt there's actually transphobic stuff in there. And again, to go back to what you were saying though about like why she's sort of maybe bringing it up now, it is theoretically possible that she wasn't actually a transphobe when she wrote them anyway. Like they are like over a decade old, even the last one now. But and you have to be age verified on Twitter and stuff. Like, is it sort of her responsibility to filter her opinion, or is it, I suppose, adults' responsibility to make sure their kids aren't exposed to the viewpoints of J.K. Rowling to the good take flaw?
I feel like there is an age restriction on Twitter, but like kind of what I was seeing a lot, because again I was kind of fascinated by her. Well, not fascinated, but I wanted to see what she was saying and like what she's been doing over like the last few weeks. She's been posting chapters of a new children's book that's going to be published later on this year, but she's kind of published them online, and she's been getting kids to draw pictures from the latest chapter and post it to her via like their parents' Twitter feed. But I'm not kidding. Every single time she kind of tweets a new picture, like most of the comments are like, essentially you're anti-trans, and without fail, there's always a parent on there who'll always say, oh, this space is for my children to post pictures to J.K. Rowling, kind of go away kind of thing, and it's like, no, like this needs to be said. And yeah, so there's no filter in that respect. Sorry, my mic just slipped down. Yeah, there is no filter in that respect. Like it is a bit of like an open. It's like almost like the Wild West on Twitter. You can pretty. There's no real rules. There's no kind of. there's no like under 18 Twitter, if you know what I mean. Twitter is what it is. So yeah, so without fail, every time JK Rowling tweets about the latest chapter or retweets like a drawing that a child's done, people will often in the comments kind of come in reminding her of her her anti-trans stance. So yeah, no, it always makes for an interesting and distressing reading, seeing what some parents have to say about that.
Yeah, I think that yeah, I think that regardless of whether, there's like children involved or not, um, I think she does need to sort of be a little bit more, you know, responsible with what she puts on Twitter. And I think that's,
Yeah,
just one of the things you give up when you become popular, basically. Like, you
definitely.
sort of that you know poor little rich boy type thing, but it's like it's a reality. Like, once you become someone who essentially can shape opinion, you then take on that responsibility that you have to make sure that what you're saying is correct, um, and what you're saying doesn't harm other people. But I
Yeah,
think that I think that a lot of people just don't get that. Um, and she can, like, again, she can say what she wants, but like the other thing is that, like, we don't have to like sit there and go, well, that's you know silly old JK. um, like, we also can go back to her and say, like, you're being transphobic. This is not right. This is, you know, but yeah, I think if she maybe took a moment, like, did a bit of her own, like, did I would say did a bit of her own research, but obviously her research has taken her in the wrong direction on this thing. But
yeah,
actually, like, listening to like what people are saying to her, like, people are like posting things. There's like also good resources in the UK around like trans issues and stuff. Like, I'm sure there's plenty of people that she could reach out to, and uh, have a sit down with people that, like, who could discuss these things. But um, I just she doesn't want to, it seems. But like, I think that that's a certain responsibility that she has taken on, in regards to basically her celebrity.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, like, because I think as well, like, another kind of because this kind of forms almost like a wider narrative about what J.K. Rowling's been kind of getting up to for like the last kind of 10 years, kind of like post Harry Potter. She has continually kind of said that she's a supporter of LGBT stuff, but in the actual text and the way she's gone about things, it's clear that she doesn't ultimately post Harry Potter. For example, she said that like Dumbledore was gay, even though it's never mentioned in the text or the book. And it's like, well, if you're going to make Dumbledore gay, actually put it in the text, make it. They had to show an out and proud and gay Dumbledore in one of the prequel films. It's just not there. It's just not mentioned in the chance they had. And a lot of the kind of the post amendments to the Harry Potter universe, and I think as people have gotten a bit more, um, I guess woke really, yeah. People have realised that there are some issues in particular the Harry Potter books, with stuff like the only Chinese character being called Cho Chang, for example, um, or the slightly dodgy subtext of like all the goblins, for example, working in banks and looking a bit, looking a bit Jewish. Um, and the whole idea of the house elves and the slavery system that goes on in the Harry Potter universe. And I think people have increasingly noticed lots of like, dodgy elements in the series. And as we've gotten on and Rowling has had opportunities to not make kind of make amends for some of that stuff, she's just she's not done it. She, she's ultimately not. She's not interested. She'll say that she is. Like I want a gay Dumbledore, but she's not going to give people the gay Dumbledore, which I think is a massive shame for the fans and for Harry Potter's massive LGBT fan base, but also for representation in general. And I feel like the transphobia stuff is almost like the final nail in the coffin. Certainly for me, and kind of what's been happening over like the last couple of years. Where, as I said, with the opportunities to add a more diverse world into her books and to engage with some of the the slightly more pernicious elements of the Harry Potter series, but she's just not done it. Um, and she's also kind of recently signed a letter denouncing cancel culture, which is a whole other topic. And it's like she's doing everything she's doing everything she can to to make fans dislike her.
Well, obviously
Well,
she's
yeah,
gonna
it's
sign a
like,
letter against cancel culture after like
Of
what
course she is.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry, Marcus.
Yeah.
no, I was just going to say, well, it's like the coward's progressivism, isn't it? Really, like she can say all she wants on to a specific people who already like her and are already fairly liberal. She can say that Dumbledore's gay, but to put it in a book that, like you saw, obviously, me and you watched that terrible documentary where they were talking about the witchcraft of
Oh yeah.
Harry Potter. Like, could you imagine if people thought that she was indoctrinating people into wizardry and also indoctrinating them into a gay lifestyle? Like, yeah, it would be like she clearly is like intelligent enough to know that her fans won't care if Dumbledore's gay, but maybe parents who are on the fence about buying Harry Potter will maybe hear about it, and there'll be campaigns in like the Telegraph or something to say it's shoving gay agenda down kids' throats. And it's a cowardly thing to do, just to say like in retrospect this thing that will only be seen by people who agree with me is something I agree with. Like they did a similar thing with SpongeBob, where they said on Pride that he was gay, but he's not gay in any of the cartoons or anything. It's just basically people who already follow Nickelodeon on. It was on Twitter they announced it, so it's like people who already agree won't mind that he's gay will now have confirmation of it. That people who will care don't have to deal with that fact at all. Like it's like the cowardliest thing to do possible, and it's just there to gain kudos and points. Really, it doesn't do anything other than enhance the sort of person's brand. Really.
Well, yeah, I call it like monetized wokeness, where like big corporations, especially like in media, will say that this person is trans or is asexual, but then there's no mention of it in the actual text itself, which is the thing that people are going to go see. And, again, as I mentioned earlier with the whole Caitlyn Jenner thing, this was the chance to do something like that. I think, particular um, with the Fantastic Beasts film. I've not seen it. I've heard the second one's awful, but this was the chance to to have the out and gay Dumbledore, which people have always wanted, from pretty much when JK Rowling announced it, and instead they do nothing. They just do nothing. Like the writer of Solo, a Star Wars story, the greatest film of the 21st century, said that Lando Calrissian was asexual,
No,
but there's none of that. Pansexual, sorry, yeah, my bad, yeah, pansexual, yeah. And yeah, but there's no mention of it. Like it's not brought up. Like and it's like, I do think that I think especially with stuff like media, like as you said earlier, Heath, like you could have met a trans man, trans woman, and you might not even know it. I think when it comes to like media, I think if you're going to bring up something like that, especially with the current climate and the amount of people that films and shows and books could potentially reach, having that person represented, it represents a massive opportunity, not just for that community, but for people in general to, see that, well, what, they're people, but instead, media continually just doesn't engage and will try to get points from the liberal left, for saying, oh, we've got a pansexual person in this film, or we've got a trans person in this film, but we're only in it briefly enough, so we can cut out those 5 seconds for China. You know, it just sucks.
Yeah. Well, to be fair to the, I think I can't remember whether it was the writer or the director of Solo, the greatest movie of the 21st century. Um,
Thank you.
but actually in the interview, someone asked him whether Lando was pansexual, and his answer was, yeah, I suppose. Like, you know, like,
Was
yeah.
it?
And then it was
He
just
does
sort
fuck
of,
a robot himself.
yeah. So, like, it was this thing that was sort of then, like, blown out of proportion by the media. Like, the guy just gave this,
Oh,
like,
was
sort
it?
of, like, non-committal answer, like, sure, why not? Like, but then it just spiraled out of control. And
Okay.
like that's sort of different to what Rowling was doing with, like, explicitly saying that this character was gay and then not not even showing it, like not even doing what you said, which was like put in the 5 seconds that could be edited out for China. Like
Yeah.
it wouldn't have taken much, really, um,
Yeah,
to
because like, sorry, go
go on.
on.
No, you go.
I was going to say, yeah, as much as like those scenes infuriate me, like in the Disney films, where they said like, oh, Gaston's gay. Here's 5 seconds of him dancing with a bloke. Or here's that female general lady in Star Wars. She kisses a lady at the end of Rise of Skywalker. As much as those scenes infuriate me because they're only there for as I say, 2 to 5 seconds, and then you can easily cut it out for China instead of having one of the main characters be gay, like Poe and Finn. But yeah, it's that lack of engaging. But I suppose at least it's there, I guess. Like it's better than like having 5 seconds of no, it's better than not having 5 seconds of Dumbledore kissing a guy. At least it's there. But obviously it's part of the wider problem of erasure of LGBT people in media.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To be fair, though, I think that the issue is that if, say that they had made it like an integral part of the story, it would just be banned in Russia and China. Like, they do actually have, I think, a point to say that they have to do it in a small way that can be cut out, because like with China, it's like Star Wars isn't even as big in there. Like, they only give 15 permits for Western films. Like, to be fair, the difference isn't that they would be in China with a bigger role. It just wouldn't be there anyway. So at least if they have a small part they can cut out, it might get seen by bigots in areas where it will be shown. Like, I think it would be different if like Russia and China would have to take the pieces of media, but they'll just refuse to have it, really. So it's not like there's a difference where they can actually do something there. I still think it would be better if it was a bigger part of it, but I think that they do kind of have a point that it wouldn't be shown in those countries without that.
I don't know, but then there's also other countries around the world which also are really like anti-LGBT, and you know that they've done it for that particular reason, though, right? Like, and yeah, as much as Star Wars isn't big in China, they want to make it big in China. They
Yeah, but I
try.
think that the government would ban the film if it had a bigger part of it. Like, I don't think that, like, if China had if it had a bigger LGBT subplot, I think it wouldn't actually be shown in China at all. Like, you could just, like, the argument against that is that they could just, they could say that we're going to get rid of China, and then we're going to appeal to more people in different areas, kind of thing. But obviously they have to make money, and China's like the biggest market that's there. So it's kind of the production model, I think, that's an issue as well. Like, I don't agree with their, I personally think that for moral reasons, it would be better if they had a more integrated into the plot sort of LGBT characters that could then, they could do more good in the countries that they're in, rather than just having a small amount just to cut out and get into China to make more money. But I think that within the argument that they're making, there is sort of an internal logic to it.
I was going to say that you sort of say that, like, there's like there can't be like a gay person with like or a central, like like gay plot or characters or stuff like that, but like Bohemian Rhapsody like was shown in
Yeah.
China. Like the
That's a
story
very
of
good point.
Freddie, yeah, like this is one of the things, and I think it's sometimes an easy out for a lot of like film companies and stuff like that, is that they're like, oh, we can't put this in because it won't, like, if there is this bigger sort of gay plot, blah blah blah, like it's not going to be seen in China, and it's like, and that like Bohemian Rhapsody just sort of shows that doesn't like bear out in reality. The thing is that they censored out like a lot of the sort of the explicitly
There we
gay
go.
stuff.
Yeah.
Like they did censor that out, but the actual central thing. And having said that as well, I watch a lot of Chinese dramas and stuff like that. And there is one that I watched, and I described it to a friend as a TV series about two men that fall in love, raise a kid together, and then split up. And then there's a whole like subplot about kung fu zombies underneath it. Like, like the thing is that like a lot of these things, like you could have like this full on like sort of gay romance, cut out all the kissing. You could show it in China, and they would just be like, those two are really good friends. Like that's
Yeah.
yeah.
I remember
think...
watching it in.
Sorry, go.
I was going to say, I remember watching it in a film studies class. We watched a Chinese horror film, which is like a ghost story. Only problem in China is that you can't have ghosts in your film. So I watched a ghost horror film, but there was no ghost in it. It's all like implied.
Yeah.
It's so strange.
But yeah, there are no ghosts and gays rules, but it seems like that's
No ghosts or time travel.
yeah. Which also like no time travel, but like Avengers 2, the the one with the time travel in it. Not
Endgame, yeah.
Endgame, that's the one. Yeah, that played in China fine. Like
That's crazy.
like I think that I do think that there is this sort of like there is this China boogeyman basically thing that a lot of film studios just use to get around actually having like proper representation in their films and stuff like that. Another point I wanted to make though, that we sort of like when we were talking about like Dumbledore being gay and then it being said afterwards and that sort of thing. The one thing I would say about that though is that like I don't think that necessarily in the text it needs to be like said, like this person needs to be like, yes, I'm a gay man or whatever.
Yeah, of course.
Like,
yeah.
Like I think that and you don't even necessarily need to have them like doing anything like making out with a guy or whatever, but like if it's something like you can say, okay, not so much this character is gay, but you could say I intended this character to be gay. So which are completely different things. So one is saying that the reading of this, your reading of this character should be that they're a gay person, whereas the other is intended to be gay is like, this is what I thought. If it comes across to people like that, great. If it doesn't, well, then that's your interpretation. But yeah, I don't necessarily need just for all the people listening at home, I'm a gay man. I don't necessarily need like a Dumbledore sucking cock on in Fantastic Beasts for me to be like happy with the representation. Like
Sorry, that tickled me.
But like, even just like,
Yeah,
even if it was just like an explicit mention of the relationship that Dumbledore had with Grindelwald, like that's all you really needed in that. You didn't even need like them
Yeah.
like kissing or whatever. Just like an explicit acknowledgement of that relationship.
Yeah, it's got to be like appropriate to the film, if you know what I mean. Like, if your film's not like romantic, then yeah, there's no need to bring up the token gay character to get points of representation.
Mm.
I think that's why it hurt a lot of fans a lot with the Fantastic Beasts 2 film, because that plot is specifically about Dumbledore and Grindelwald, and this is your chance to show their relationship because J.K. Rowling has said that they were an item.
Yeah.
It's like it's. But I think that's what hurt people even more. It wasn't even the fact that we had the throwaway 5 seconds like in a lot of other Disney films. It's a fact that here was the opportunity to tell a story of a young Dumbledore and a young Grindelwald who had a relationship, and yeah, instead they just don't do anything.
Mm.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people get annoyed at the idea that they're trying to sell product off of, as you were saying, off of woke credentials, basically.
Yeah.
Like, there is no reason why she's doing that other than just to try and get people to think, oh, this is kind of cool and progressive and stuff. I'll support this without having to then do the like it. As you say, they don't have to be any like on screen. Like they don't even need to show anything. But the fact that she's mentioning it specifically to as a point and then trying to get it's so hypocritical because she's doing that in order to try and gain sort of like points, basically, to say that this is progressive, this is doing like the actual aim of what she like. It's not achieving anything what she's saying apart from increasing her sort of like branding. Really, there's nothing that it's doing then to help anyone, basically, who's who. Like, yeah, what is the point of even mentioning it if you're not going to do anything? If she hadn't mentioned it, that wouldn't have been the issue. But the fact by bringing it up to try and, but it's like the same thing that happens when like like this. There's so much sort of woke advertising now, or people call it woke capitalism, where it's you'll have an advert that's designed to, it might have like there's the Pepsi one where it's like, I don't know who the celebrity is, but it's a celebrity at a rally, which is like a Black Lives Matter type one, and she gives like the policeman a Coke, and that was their like specific, or Pepsi, sorry, not Coke. How dare I get the brands wrong? I might get the homophobic one in there, but yeah, she gives the officer like a Pepsi, and that's clearly designed to rile up people who will be upset by it, and then to do the opposite. People will go, oh no, it's actually really progressive. Basically, all that's happening is that people are arguing about fucking Pepsi commercial, mentioning Pepsi in it constantly, getting the ads up there. But you see it all the time, kind of thing. There's the anti-rape, what's the shaving cream or spray. I don't watch adverts. It sounds like
Gillette.
an old man trying to.
I know the one you mean. Yeah.
Gillette. They are designed basically to get like the rape one there. It's fair enough. It's bringing an important subject to people there, but that's a byproduct. The actual product is there to get people talking about Gillette and then to buy Gillette. There is no other purpose for what they're doing other than to do that. And I suppose this actually touches on one of the issues we've talked. Twitter as a business model as well. Like, it's not there to do anything other than get people engaged. So I suppose one of the issues with it, with specifically J.K. Rowling, is that basically people will kick off about it on either side, and then people who don't care about J.K. Rowling as a person but care about her views, pro or negative, are talking about her. So it's probably actually increasing her popularity in a way rather than like decreasing it. Like, I'd be interested to know how many people she has lost as fans and gained as people who don't care and do it. I know obviously it's going to be impossible to do. There's not going to be like a one-to-one analysis where you can go book sales up and down and stuff. But I would wonder how many people have thought about J.K. Rowling and maybe bought one of the books now from people talking about it versus people who decided not to buy the book in a response to it. Like, it's a platform designed to aggravate people and just push the extreme of one side or the other to someone to get them angry and to keep going on the platform.
I would like to just point out at this point, though, that there is a difference between like woke branding and outrage marketing. So, yeah, you've got but they sometimes will go hand in hand. But like basically, woke marketing is just putting a rainbow symbol on your logo at Pride. So, that's that type of thing. Whereas like outrage marketing is that you're specifically going for a hot button topic and trying to generate that outrage. The Gillette commercial is one of those. Is a perfect example of outrage marketing. So you basically, hot button issue, toxic masculinity. Then what you do is you get people upset. The people who think that toxic masculinity doesn't exist, they get all upset and say that they're not going to buy Gillette. Then you've got the people on the other side going, well, arguing against them, and yeah, it just basically makes them money. They have a dip in sales for like a month, and then it goes back up even further afterwards. Anyway, but I don't know. Yeah, see, I don't know whether she is engaging in sort of that sort of thing. I don't think that this is like some sort of nefarious plan of hers to get more followers. I think she's actually genuinely committed to this insanity.
I don't think it's I think it's the business model of Twitter rather than her. I don't think what she's doing on it is to wade into. I think this actually goes back to what you were saying about her being more responsible on Twitter. I think that she'll see her viewpoint as the right one and sort of damage limitation kind of thing. So I'm fairly sure that she'll think I'm an important person who's got, I'm assuming over 1 million followers, if not substantially more. But I'm an important person who needs to wade into this debate to get a important subject, which I think is correct, onto here to spread to people. But then the issue is with the way Twitter works is the thing that gets the most comments and aggregate aggression on there is going to be the thing that gets pushed the furthest. Because if you go on something, you agree with it, you're not going any further then. If you go on there, you disagree, you post on it, someone posts back, and you get into a massive argument, you can spend hours on there trying, it's the whole drama of trying to prove you're right, people are wrong, seeing bad opinions and stuff. You'll see that more than, but I think it's the business model which is pushing that rather than anything on JK Rowling's part on there. But I also think that the issue is framing it around sort of responsibility. I don't think she thinks what she's doing is irresponsible. I think that to get into her mindset, she will think that by what she's doing is protecting women, and that it's not doing any harm the other way. Like, she specifically says that she is pro-trans and that she's not a transphobe. She'll see that as she'll see that as a mischaracterization. Like, I doubt that and also, like you were saying, Chris, about her having opinions that you would agree with, like anti-Brexit, and I doubt anti-Tory because she's so rich, but I know she's a Lib Dem, for example, but which is pretty much as bad. But she'll just see it as a continuum, basically. She'll see, I'm anti-Brexit, but I'm also, it's like those stupid people who probably say against extremists of all sides kind of stuff. So she probably does see herself as responsible. But I know that's two different things. But yeah, I don't think it's a nefarious thing on her part. And I do think she genuinely feels like she is responsible.
Yeah, I suppose it sort of goes, it's sort of that same mentality of the Christians that scream at people about, like, they're going to burn in hell. Not realizing that they're, actually hurting people by saying shit like that. Because, they think that they're saving people. Like, it doesn't enter their mind that they're actually hurting people with that sort of rhetoric.
Yeah, exactly. And to bring up the, I think, the idea you won't be able to beat, like, people like that in an argument where you say stuff like you're harming trans people. because to them, like like the Christians and stuff. They know they're going to hurt, like say anti-abortion activists and stuff who are going to limit abortion. Like they know that's going to hurt people and stuff. They just think it's like you'll do anything for the greater good, won't you, and stuff. Like if JK Rowling genuinely thinks trans people are a danger to women, then it won't make a difference if she harms trans people because there are more women. So you're doing something in the greater cause, basically. Like the people who are anti-abortion will know that a certain amount of women will die from complications to abortion, but they see point of conception as that, so it's killing more babies, allowing abortion to do. That's an extreme example of the same idea. But I'm assuming from her point of view that even if it does harm some trans people, you can other them anyway by saying that their viewpoint is, well, it's not actually harming them. That's just how they feel. But then on the other flip side of it, if they're a genuine harm to women, there are more women than trans people. Therefore, it's like you're limiting. You're not by if the trans lobby could then take over, could destroy feminism, or you could like to get like for a TERF or something. Say that you thought that trans people were going to take away women's rights that have been accumulated over the last 40 years. It would exclude the feminist achievements of 4 years. You would do anything to get to the aim of stopping them then. So I think that by framing it in terms of how much damage they're doing or to be responsible, from their morality system, they are being responsible and they are limiting damage. It's just that their opinion of who is damaged and who isn't is different. So they won't care about that because they'll see it as damaging the cause of the greater good. And they'll see people who defend trans people as damaging to women. Therefore, they will not. So I think just the framing of it is a thing that in their minds won't make any difference anyway, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying there. Like my point more was like, I suppose, in regards to like, the responsibility more in regards to like, actually researching what you're talking about and that sort of thing. Like, before you have an opinion on something. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right in that she thinks that she is doing the right thing at the moment. And it is really weird that she with the preponderance of scientific evidence and a whole bunch of people going, you're wrong and here's why you're wrong, she's hasn't sort of come around on it. I think that there's definitely sort of I suppose there is I suppose with her it's like a fear response, and that like she's obviously very afraid of this trans terror, and so she is like fighting against it. She is a warrior against this issue, but like I don't think that's like I don't think that's good enough. Like to be perfectly honest, like I feel like she would be like it's sort of a similar thing like with men who think that like women are inferior or something like that. Like I'm sure she would be the first person to be like, well, you need to read this book, you need to educate yourself, blah 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 on it. And it's so like she should be holding herself to that same sort of standard, which is that she needs to like educate herself on this issue before she starts like talking about it.
Yeah, she definitely does need to do further. I do feel though, like because like transphobia is so prevalent, especially in, as you were saying about like British society and stuff. Like it is possible that you would find published authors who are transphobic who will make various like the problem I think with it is that it's like she could do all the research she wanted to if she's starting from a place of trying to prove that transphobia is that the trans lobby is against feminism and stuff. She could read Germaine Greer, or she could. The problem is because she is not again, this is the problem of it being JK Rowling rather than someone who's, she probably is only, because she's so rich and her job is to do books, children books, she's probably busy with that and won't, be doing, but there will be smarter people than her who will push back with different, like it's a joke, isn't it? Like, to quote a Medium article, Medium's a website, me and you could publish something on there right now, but there will be people who come back with stuff that's been that has like, there'll be people who come back with smarter responses to people. So I feel like that it kind of is a morality thing. You have to defend the people who are getting harmed in a way. I think that just to say it's more research and stuff, someone smart is going to come back with something with a more internal and coherent worldview and stuff. Like, there will be sources which are more legitimate than sort of Medium to come back with and stuff. I think to some degree, like, just going back to doing more sort of research and stuff, a smarter person than her would quote more reputable sources and stuff. Like, it is kind of a debate where you have to sort of try and bring the person to your side on a more of a moral issue, I would say, is not just ignore all sort of evidence completely kind of thing. But I think that what it's going to do is just force people to go to different sources, which are, like opinion pieces. The Telegraph, big newspaper, it's not Medium, it has editors and stuff like that. They'll start quoting something on there or something. And also to a degree, like, because of the framing of it as being anti-feminist, it seems obviously ridiculous to us that it would be anti sort of feminist and stuff, but she'll come back with someone that might be, so to make the point that like Chris was talking earlier about how gender is a social construct, like a smarter trans person, again, this is not my opinion, but this would be sort of something that's more internally coherent that would maybe someone would say, and you could actually probably get published with it, might say that because it's a social construct, then to adopt the idea of femininity, to associate that with women, is damaging to women. And you could probably get that published in a, so they might say something like, if you're biologically born as a man and you want to wear a dress or to dress like a woman, then that doesn't make you a woman. It makes you a man who identifies more as a female. And then to adopt that as the thing that makes you female would be damaging, which again is ridiculous, because you said, Heath, again, you might not even know, and that's just like, it's like a caricature of the other side and stuff. But you could probably be able to get that published as a, like, I think that just saying that to get better sources than JK Rowling has, there is an industry, there's material forces to support transphobes in the form of, it divides people, it's a divisive issue and stuff, so people will be able to get, you'll be able to push that opinion more. And I think that just like to have the actual time to do fully the amount of research needed to back it takes more time than just doing sort of posts on Twitter and stuff against it and stuff, to just go against her. And again, I'm not sort of fought it fully for it. I don't know if I'm arguing against what you're saying as fully as possible, but I think that, there will be different sources that somebody could quote to that appear more better than just that. And you could start off with the opinion, like you could say, I'm going to look into this fair-mindedly, but then you could get pushed into an avenue for whatever reason of, like, another thing is not JK Rowling being rich, like, trans people are there are forces again that push them towards sort of lower work and stuff because they're oppressed. So she might not actually even know a trans person. So she's not going to go from the idea of, I know this person, I want to do she might just go into it trying to read as much as possible, and she might be only exposed to things. Mind you, again, though, she is getting this pushback constantly to read books which are pro-trans as well. So I suppose it is kind of different with her, because she could just listen to her critics and stuff. I'm assuming that she's too embittered to do that. But I just think that some people will have a better understanding of it than her. Anyway, I've been going on for ages, so I'll let you respond now.
No, I mean, I think the problem with JK Rowling, though, is, a lot of people on Twitter, like, have been kind of, doing that. They have been kind of, throwing back sources at her and links she can follow. And I think unfortunately for those people, I think it's almost like pissing in the wind because, JK Rowling's not going to engage with, her followers really on Twitter, like we'd have to create like a theoretical space where, like someone could sit down with JK Rowling and present the facts. And I can only hope that maybe someone in a personal life is going to do that with her. But, I can't help but feel that like on Twitter, people kind of throwing the actual facts at her and providing links in education. I can't help but feel, as I said, it is almost like a form of pissing in the wind, because she's not going to engage or admit publicly that she's wrong, or as she is, it'll be done in a very controlled, like statement kind of thing,
Bloody hell, Chris.
Yeah,
your theoretical space, you damn lefties want to get people into education camps.
Re-education camps, yeah, Jesus.
Yeah. That's basically what if anyone listens to this, that's what they're going to take from this. 3 cis men.
Chris endorses re-education camps. you could take that sound bite.
But yeah, I think that also something you were saying in there about like sort of the idea of like gender being a social construct, and like what is femininity, what is masculinity, blah 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 blah. Like these are like conversations that like trans people have been having for ages. Like it's what does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to be a woman? Like there are trans people who don't necessarily present in the traditional form of like femininity or masculinity. I think that there's and I think this is sort of one of the things people may sort of find confusing about it, because like once you sort of like you can sort of get into the weeds of it really, and because you're sort of like, well, if they want to be a woman, they should look like a woman. And then you're like, yeah, okay, they should look like a woman, but what does a woman look like? Like, line up 1,000 cisgendered women, and they'll look completely different from each other. They'll dress completely different from each other, and I think that's like possibly one of the like barriers to people understanding, is that it's sort of like you can have that surface level understanding, but then once you get into the weeds, it gets a little bit like hairy. But I think that, yeah, she's at this stage, she's being willfully ignorant. I don't think that there's any reason why she has this opinion other than she just refuses to learn.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Well, I think that with her, yeah, it's the fact that she'll have dug in now basically, and won't be open to any kind of discussion with it basically. But I think again, like to get away sort of from her sort of specifically. But I think that one of the dangers of saying like to do the reading kind of thing is, I don't think there's necessarily like like if somebody doesn't understand it, that they are completely open to just supporting trans people because they just think that it doesn't matter basically, like they're just a person, who cares what the reasons are behind it, just support them anyway. Like I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but I think that when people have their mind made up anyway, it's pointless to tell JK Rowling to do the reading or do any of this kind of stuff, because it's, first of all, it's not going to work as well. She'll just have some counter argument. It's the same thing that people make when they try and convince people about a lot of stuff, like because her aims are different from the aim of the person trying to talk her out of it. Like it's just going to end up where you just get absolutely nowhere, and it's just a giant sort of waste of time basically. Like the thing about the cancel culture thing is, obviously, as you said, it's good and it should be supported, trying to talk people out of sort of their opinion and stuff. But for JK Rowling, it's just stupid. There's no way that she's going to change her opinion at this point, and probably never was going to. to do so. So it should be just focusing on sort of other. I think when somebody's made their mind up about it as well, without some kind of intervention that's not going to be online, they're not going to change it. Like, there's no reason for her to really change her mind. Like, she's not going to be changed her mind by people who already don't like her telling her about the sort of other opinions kind of stuff. Like if the aim of having a go at JK Rowling is to help trans people because she's doing oppressive things, I think that there's better uses of their time than to even engage with JK Rowling. Like, they should illegally download Harry Potter and then give the money they would have spent to the Mermaids charity and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, I agree with that completely. So, steal her books, and then give the money to someone else. What's that old what's that thing? Be gay and do crimes. That's what we wanted to do. But like, yeah, no, I agree with you. I think that she at this point, I think with her, yes, definitely. I think she's probably very set in her ways, and she's not going to sort of. She's probably not paying attention to like all of the stuff that people are saying to her on Twitter. I think though that there is probably some utility in people responding to her because, you know, potentially people that might agree with her, you know, might post something on one of her Twitter things, and then like a conversation starts there, or they may be just scrolling through it and see something that they may not have considered before. I think that there is definitely sort of, maybe not for JK Rowling, but for someone who actually who follows her and may not, who may sort of agree with her a bit, but might be on the fence with it. It would be helpful to people to see like the other side of that, and you know that there is actually, you know, there is information out there that supports this, and there's a lot more information out there that supports transgendered people than any sort of anti-trans stuff, like, and from reputable sources, and their, you know, studies and all that sort of thing. So I think that there is definitely like some utility to actually pushing back against that, even if it's not going to sway JK Rowling. It could still sway someone who's you know, who follows her and is maybe a bit on the fence about this whole thing.
Well, I mean, for me, that was one of the most eye-opening things about something that happened early last year, where one of my favorite YouTube personalities, H Bomber Guy, did a stream of Donkey Kong 64, where he was going to like 101% the game, because you know, the game doesn't follow metrics, and you can't get 101% in the game. You know, like watching that stream, the amount of people who kind of coming forward in the comments or talking on the show, you know, like about their experiences and about what it means. It certainly opened up my eyes to, you know, the amount of people that this, you know, that go through these issues, and it was an amazing eye-opening event for me personally. You know, Warner's a fan of video games. It was nice seeing, you know, something positive coming out of the video game community for once. And second, most importantly, was seeing that, you know, what the trans experience is like. You know, it's something I don't understand because I'm not a trans person, but it was just amazing seeing all these people coming forward with their stories and sharing their experiences, and you know, and that's the sort of thing that I think needs to happen. Something overwhelming, you know, like that, something eye opening, and get you to think about, you know, different people's experiences and stories in different ways, and that, you know, there are positive ways to affect change. And the amount of money which you know, the stream raised for Mermaids, which is a UK-based trans charity, was phenomenal. Like, you know, talking millions of pounds, I believe. So that's the sort of stuff, I think.
Yeah, it wasn't millions.
It was. Was it not millions? Yeah, sorry.
No.
Yeah, it was quite a lot of money for a video game stream, anyway.
Yeah.
But
I think
yeah,
it ended
amazing.
Up being about £350,000, £350,000.
Oh, right, okay, right, yeah.
Was it more than Galina got? Because didn't he basically got some funding. So more about, sorry, like he got some funding taken away from it, didn't he?
Yeah.
And that's why they did it in sort of in
Yeah.
turn, basically. Well, do you know if it was more than the actual funding that was deprived of?
I don't think it
from
was
them?
quite all the money. Yeah, because Graham Linehan managed to rile up users on Mumsnet to boycott the National Lottery's decision to award £500,000 to mermaids. I think it was £500,000.
Yeah.
So H Bomber Guy stream raised £350,000,
Yeah, but
£1,000, which is
yeah, but they ended up getting so basically there was an appeal of it, and they ended up getting the other funding
right,
anyway.
yeah.
So, so they
So we got more.
yeah, they ended up getting more. So Graham Linehan
Wonderful.
like failed in every aspect of that, which is just brilliant.
dear,
And now
that
he's
man.
been suspended off Twitter, and it's a wonderful
I
time
know,
to be
it's
alive.
great. It's wonderful. Yeah,
But, yeah.
so
I think that Graham Linehan's just he's a fucking joke. Like honestly,
it's horrible.
he's sort of he's much worse than Rowling, but I suppose just give her time,
Oh god.
But yeah, she'll probably become more entrenched in her opinions. Yeah, so
Yeah, but like I don't know how many times people pointed out that Graham Linehan would attack women on Twitter and stuff like that in the name of protecting women, and it's he's just and this not even you could make the argument, well, it's trans women and he doesn't believe in trans women, blah 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 blah, but it was just cis women as well. He's just an idiot. I'm so glad he's gone, but anyway, again, you British people and your TERFs.
Us British people and our turfs in our media, I know it's terrible. It's so embarrassing.
it is actually interesting though what people like him and JK Rowling do though, because they do the same thing that racists do, where they we're talking about obviously with the education and side of it as well, but they do you see people who are racist where they will quote the sort of meaningless statistics which pro them, with the Black Lives Matter stuff. They'll point out to what about black on black crime or stuff like that. But I think with the what they'll start doing is they'll go well, look at this person who transitioned and regretted it, as if it's I'm assuming again, I don't know all the statistics, so I'm assuming it's a very small minority anyway of it. But yeah, I think that's another thing though that will happen with to get back to the idea of the to the education kind of stuff of it. They will see that as more damaging than the damage that's been done by, say that you were to sort of state statistics about the damage to trans people or something, or they'll point out another statistic that basically benefits them, kind of thing. I think that the way to sort of combat transphobia is similar to what you were saying, Chris, about how you still saw the experiences that people had through the comments of the H Bomber Guy one. And I think obviously, the more people meet actual trans people and get talking to them, they'll see that they're not the monsters that they get viewed as kind of through, because they don't see anyone, they only hear other people's experience of it. It's interesting, with racism as well, people who are more racist tend to be in places with the least amount of diversity, cities that are more diverse are less racist. And, you look at sort of Brexit or Trump or something, Brexit was actually highest in places with the least amount of immigration, which seems bizarre for people who then say immigration is the issue. It's because they have the least of it, but they're scared it's going to come. And with Trump, apparently the biggest votes he got were in places that were doing good, but were close to places that were doing badly. So people had a fear that they would become poor, so then clung to obviously a sort of strongman kind of figure. But yeah, I think that was the way to. We've sort of solved transphobia now because we have the way out of it. But I think that's the sort of way forwards with it, really, to expose more people to trans voices and people, and then they'll see what they actually are rather than.
Like it's interesting, like that the sort of one of the main concerns, like they say it's like, one of the main concerns of the transphobes is like the whole bathroom issue, or like women's spaces, I suppose is how they sort of phrase it. But like you're talking about racism as well, but like that was one of the like main arguments of like when they were talking about like desegregating like bathrooms and stuff like that, and during the civil rights period, is that like black people will be able to get in and rape the white women, and it's like, and then like you looked at the sort of the gay rights movement and stuff like that, and it was a similar thing. Like with women, they were like, oh, these lesbians are in like women's spaces and they'll rape all the straight women, and now it's like the same sort of thing exactly again, like the trans people will get into these women's spaces and rape all the women, and it's like none of this is borne out. Like every time they use it, it's like it's never borne out as like an actual issue, and I just don't know why they keep going back to it. But like it seems to be an effective tool. But yeah, I do agree that like it's just a case of that you need to just like get to know people who are trans or who are different from you or whatever. Like there's I suppose it's that sort of we were talking before about like the atomization of society and stuff like that, we're so disconnected from people, and once we actually have a human connection with someone, they're not that monster that they have been built up to be by these seemingly insane people. But yeah, I think that it's just a case of like educating people on these issues, and just like sort of them interacting with people and understanding like they are just people. They're not different. They have all the same struggles as you, but then they also have another struggle on top of that. And I think that's probably the way. But that's not really going to, that's it's not something that's going to solve transphobia anytime soon. And I think we, possibly, I think that the method of just meeting people really needs to be supplemented more heavily with like the education aspect, like so actually having transgender issues being brought up in regards to like sex education and stuff like that, and like talking about gender in that sort of context. And because I think I don't think that there's and you can start that conversation at a fairly young age in regards to like the gender stuff and how gender works and that sort of thing, and then maybe I was about to say maybe transition, maybe move into like maybe move into the more sort of like, as they get older, move into the more nitty gritty stuff about like hormones and that sort of thing. Like just as a sort of like all it really needs to be is like a lesson in like sex education. Like it doesn't need to be the whole thing. Probably just like a 1 hour lesson or a half an hour lesson. It doesn't need to be a terrible lot. But I think that's probably enough to actually get people like thinking about it and trying to understand it more. And there doesn't seem to be a lot of that happening in schools at the moment.
Well, when I was a kid, there was none of it, and I don't know what's actually happening. Obviously, it's difficult now because there's no actual schools.
No schools open, yeah.
But yeah, I suppose it's a sort of it's a really strange sort of almost postmodern sort of phenomenon, really, and stuff. Because I suppose like with racism at earlier periods and stuff as well, like the like the actual damage racism would do would be through obviously electing racists who put in sort of damaging legislation and sort of the meetings that you have with like you before like the internet I suppose and stuff. Your actual interaction with people who were different from you would all be sort of face to face. So like you would have more of an option to actually do that, I suppose. And so especially with COVID, I suppose, moving into a different space where there probably is less opportunity to do. Like the workplace, if people work from home more, then that won't even be a good way to. And I suppose obviously you still get chats and stuff, but I suppose it won't be that human sort of interaction of being next.
Yeah, it's different, isn't it?
Yeah, and there'll be probably less opportunity to actually get to know people on a sort of person by person basis. There's less downtime to just chat to the person sort of next to you, I suppose, as well. So I suppose it is a bizarre world going into. Like I think like I don't know, it's weird. Like obviously now and stuff, you can cause so much damage online, but I suppose before, like the damage you could do to somebody would be based on actually, meeting them and because I think that part of sort of like why people think people who are different, like from a biological level, obviously people are scared of stuff they don't understand and stuff, aren't they? And they're scared of. So without the society and like around us and stuff, if you were just sort of like random person, you came across a black person without any understanding or seeing anything before, you probably would be scared because of your biological reaction to fear things that are different from you. So obviously then when you grow up and you're around people and it's, like you don't have that anymore because you understand what they're sort of like and stuff. But I don't know, it seems strange to be moving into an online world where you may interact with people on a sort of theoretical basis and sort of through text or image before you actually meet them face to face.
I got nothing.
So that was very rapidly and weird.
Yes.
Just sort of going.
I
been going on for like.
I did have something I was going to bring up, but then I've forgotten it during that ramble. But yeah, I don't know. I think we've spent like 2 hours now. Do you think we have successfully solved the problem with JK Rowling and transgender issues?
I think it's probably solving itself. Books, people will already have the opinion whether to support her or not. They'll like her or not, or agree or not, and then it will just not go anywhere, and it'll just move on to something else probably. And yeah, people who don't like her will stop liking her, I suppose. But I suppose it's solving itself.
Yeah.
The
that's where I'm at.
massive absence of Waldo fan base is riled up by the fact that we support
just under
trans
200
rights.
subscribers,
yeah. 200 subscribers, like, you used to be cool, man.
Yeah, well, we're gonna drop to like back down to double digits soon because of this, I think. It's like half our fan base is like, okay, no, I'm getting off the good take bandwagon.
Yeah. Get the well, we can just like pivot to be like that one angry gamer guy who just like complains about everything, all the like SJW
that
shit.
guy.
I saw a tweet today about like apparently in the new Assassin's Creed they're gonna have the ability to have like gay Viking sex, and he was complaining about that, and I was just like, I think this makes me want to start playing video games again. Like,
this makes me more curious.
they've lost you, but they've gained me.
I'm waiting to feel like, go back to reviewing Simpsons episodes, SJW swill.
Do what we want.
You hacks.
If you look at this monograph I've written, it actually disproves your arguments. It'll be like me and Heath before you got on, we're just talking about this Reddit page where it's trying to prove that the North Korean government is actually good, but it honest to God, includes maybe about 200 links to all these different sources like RT, individual blogs, Daily Mail, just any proof that you could find that North Korea is not like some kind of authoritarian hellhole.
Wow.
I await that on the absence of Waldo subreddit that does not exist, or maybe it does. You just don't know about it.
It doesn't exist yet.
Someone creates it just to post that. 200 links of how we're wrong.
It is weird though, like with the I think it's similar to the North Korea stuff that like I couldn't imagine a good faith anti-trans opinion kind of thing. So I would find it difficult to know how anyone could come back from like their like opinion and stuff, because it's just going to be based around what they actually feel, isn't it, and stuff. It's just going to be like, I don't like them, here's some evidence that supports me, and anything against it will just be like, oh, but it's weird, I don't like it, kind of thing. Like, same with racism, there's no rational basis for that, is there? So I would find it hard to know how. Go on.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say it just comes down to, and it's the same with like homophobia as well. It just comes down to you find it icky. You don't you don't like it. You don't want to engage with it. You're scared of it. So you're just going to sort of say what you want and then find stuff to like shore up that argument. And I suppose also people maybe should come to terms with that like why do you find it icky? Why do you have this issue with it? Because there's no actual basis for this. Like what do you think's going to happen?
Yeah, exactly. And I always find it really funny that like indefinitely everyone who's like a racist or a transphobe is also some kind of like libertarian or conservative or something. But the thing they do is the same thing that racists do, where they find one individual who has done some. Because obviously trans people are people, so that also the other side of that is that some of them are going to be dicks or do terrible things or regret it afterwards. So they'll find one person who's gone, I transitioned at 16, now I'm miserable. And then they blow it out to be like, this is the result that could happen to anyone, therefore we must stop everyone from doing it, which is the exact opposite of what their principle thesis of humanity should be. Like, I think, again, to go back to Britain, it brings in a lot of those idiots who are like, rugged individualism, but black people are all evil.
Yeah, I was actually going to. That made me remember what I was going to say. So the actual rate of detransitioning is 0.1%. So basically, a tiny amount of like people who actually like start the transition process, like start on hormones and that sort of thing. Decide to detransition. And one of the things, like you were saying that she posted an article about people detransitioning. It's sort of they've moved the goalposts on that as well. So I think there was a study that came out, and it's probably mentioned in that article, where they were talking about. So they were classing people who were detransitioning as people who went to a gender clinic and then decided not to go ahead with their transition. So what this means is that it may be people who were questioning their gender, went in and like had a talk with like a psychologist or a psychiatrist or that sort of thing, got to terms with like why they were feeling this way, and then went, oh, it's got nothing to do with my gender, it's got to do with blah. And like it's really sort of disingenuous thing to say that those people are detransitioning, because they're not. They're just someone who is like not understanding what's going on with themselves and has required a bit of help and to understand what's going on with them. And it's yeah, it really it really irritates me, that sort of thing though. Like, and I suppose it goes back to what you were saying, is like you can find, evidence to support that, but then once you actually look into what that evidence says, it doesn't actually bear out what they're trying to say. It's just the, you know, but yeah. Anyway, so that was my.
But the thing is, though, they won't quote the statistics. They'll be like, look at Ruby here. And it'll be quotes from Ruby. It'll be emotional pleas. It'll be like, Ruby will be like, and again, I'm sure that the real Ruby, who's a fiction of my imagination, will be saying, like, I'm sure that there are people who genuinely are miserable because they've done it and shouldn't have done it in the first place. But yeah, to bring that out into everyone is just absurd. It's just ridiculous. And it's totally incoherent with the rest of their philosophy as well. That just proves that they only believe it when it's something that corresponds with their opinion rather than like the rest of it, kind of thing. Like, no one's actually going to quote the statistics because they, first of all, they won't look into them because they probably have an inkling that it's not good for them. And then they'll just make emotional pleas about someone who regrets it, or like again with the bathroom thing. I'm sure that there are some men who pretend to be women to rape women, but it's still illegal to rape women. Like, if you made it legal for women to go into men's bathrooms and vice versa, then make it legal to, like, you don't say that it's illegal to go in like a hotel because somebody might get raped in a hotel or something. Like, it's just stupid. It's just as ridiculous as that.
Yeah, well, like the thing is like with the whole like bathroom thing as well, is like, this idea that this person who is willing to break the law is going to balk at a social convention, basically, which is what like the gendered bathrooms come down to. Like, there are no laws in place that says that any of us can't go into a women's like bathroom. Like, we can, it is just a social convention. Like, we go into the men's bathroom or the women's bathroom. Like, so that, it is this weird sort of thing. And the other thing I wanted to sort of bring up, like you were talking about your fictitious Ruby who detransitioned. The opposite end of that is that there's people like one in particular that comes to mind is Jessica Yaniv, who is a Canadian trans woman who you may have seen an article about her because like she went to like a spa and wanted a Brazilian wax, and the people there were like, no, we only service women, and she made a big deal of it, blah blah blah. Later turns out that she's like a terrible person and potentially like a dangerous sexual predator and all this sort of thing, and like, but it was one of those things where like the sort of the right wing latched onto that and said, look at all these, all these trans people are like this one awful person. And it's like, no, not all trans people are like that. It's just that one awful person. It's like, whenever whenever daily, I assume it happens. I don't know how often like heterosexual pedophiles are caught, but let's go at least once a week. It happens. Like, you don't have people going, well, look at all these straights. Ah, they're terrible. Like, they can't stop touching their children. Like, it's that sort of weird, double standard.
About you're right, because you never see articles about like, oh, these homosexual pedophiles, it's heterosexual pedophiles, it's always, they always concentrate on the other, the minority. It's just it's so horrible. It's and I hate that hate that attitude of, it's we're gonna use this one person who's done something awful and then conflate it to make it apply to everybody. It's like it's not. I think again it goes back to what we talked about with the media. I think I think a lot of media does that in general, where it'll take the one bad egg and then conflate it so it affects everybody. And yeah, it needs to it needs to stop, please, because it is affecting people's lives and the way people view these minorities in society.
And especially the British media is just terrible because it has so many opinion pieces. Because like like the Guardian is half of that is just opinion. Because in Britain there's not as much news as there is in America or. I mean, I know that the Australian papers, I'm assuming, are terrible because you actually spawned the devil Rupert Murdoch himself, who started a lot of this. But
Rupert Murdoch, Jermaine Greer.
It's like in America, though. A lot of their monsters, if you look into it, are actually Canadian as well. So there must be some bizarre thing where they decide the other place to spread their. So, but,
when you live in a real an actual liberal democracy and that sort of thing, and then you've got your more conservative counterpart, you always just go there and try and find friends there. So I imagine that explains the whole Australia UK thing and Canada US thing.
Yeah, I mean, I understand though why they obviously it's like it's media criticism 101 from the left, isn't it? Like they spread divisive social issues to disguise the party they like's economic issues, isn't it? Like if you're going to vote Tory or something, if you're a working class guy, you're not going to do it because it's going to be beneficial to you economically. It's going to be disastrous for you, but they'll just pick on your social conservatism and try and override that from. The other issues and stuff. So that's why our media is so terrible. And I suppose the difference in Britain compared to, again, I'm assuming that you mean Britain compared to America, is that Britain actually does have sort of a more left-wing party than sort of the Democrats and stuff. Like, let's say, there is actually the need to divide people more against. Mind you, then America's incredibly divided along social lines because they've evacuated any other way of division, I suppose. So
yeah, exactly.
It's a weird one. Why?
Like both of their parties are pretty much the same economically. Like, I think we've had this conversation before. Essentially both parties are committed to funneling money to the top. It's just the way they go about it that differs in regards to like their economic policy. So yeah, they're only left with social issues to like argue about.
Yeah. But yeah, over here though, the newspapers are really right wing, so that's why we should have brought it up in the episode in the thing actually, because it's probably true that's why there's more transphobia here, to try and get people to talk about that more than any of the other stuff that they might agree on more. Yeah. But yeah, in America though, they do the exact same thing. That's why all those Republican governors started going on about bathrooms and stuff, because they're massively incompetent on running anything that actually matters to people. Like a lot of those governors in those southern states, like the most impoverished states that, need some kind of economic intervention, or they're going to be, especially now as well, with it's died down now because there's a lot of other issues to discuss that people actually are demanding answers to, like COVID related and stuff. But yeah, they talk about stuff like that to divide people along those lines rather than, the fact that the people who are in charge are massively incompetent. I mean, fucking look at Boris Johnson in this country talking about, dumb stuff to discuss, and the fact that we've got like the worst death rate from COVID. How is that in Australia though? Because is the right wing over there massively incompetent as well and just tries to divide people on social lines?
Yeah, basically. So they this is the thing in Australia. There's this whole meme that's been going for about 40 years, which is like completely false, that the conservative government are better economic managers than the Labour Party. So, um, so like you basically have that thing, and like the major like social issue that exists is actually more to do with uh, like immigration and stuff like that. It's not like I think we had like there doesn't seem to be this sort of a similar sort of discourse around like you know trans rights and stuff like that, and whether you know trans people are people and blah blah blah. I think there is a little bit in regards to like things like non-binary people and stuff like that. So I think that comes down to people just sort of not getting it, like not getting what non-binary is about. Um, but yeah, I don't think that there is necessarily the same sort of like division on social issues and stuff like that. I think that they've got their thing where you know they've tricked everyone into thinking that the liberals are better at like managing the economy than Labour Party, which is just not. It's not true. Like it's absolutely not true. And I suppose it goes back to what you were saying about you can throw facts at people as much as you want, but you know if they feel something, then you know it doesn't make any difference. So yeah. But anyway, sort of slightly off topic.
And you'll always though be able to find facts that prove whatever point of view you want and stuff, because they're sort of philosophical divisions more than anything else. Like, you know, if you want to talk about the one between, like you could say, like, is the world getting better? You know, a big thing like that. You could talk about, you know, inequality going up, and so economically, is the world better now than it was 40 years ago? There was a discussion because there's a book by Steven Pinker, who ironically actually also signed that letter JK Rowling did. But he did a book called Angels of Our Better Nature, I think it's called, in 2010 or 11 or something. And it was trying to argue that the world now is better than it was 40 years ago, like economically and for a lot of different people. And he based some stuff that was, you know, irrefutable, like that crime is decreasing and all this kind of stuff. And he also tried to make the economic points that, you know, poverty is much less than it's ever been and stuff like this. And then people who were against him were arguing that even though poverty might be decreased globally, that's because countries like Pakistan have gone from, I don't know, $1. I don't know what the actual rate is, but say it's $1 an hour to $3 an hour, or you know, like it's not actually increasing the global pot for the poor. It's just bringing people who might have been poverty levels to near poverty levels. And again, like the idea of crime as well. It's like, how do you define crime? Like if you want to go into individual crime against people, that might be down because of, you know, security measures to protect property and stuff, or because you've got a phone on you now, it's easier to call the police and stuff. So violent crime is also decreasing. But, you know, financial crime now is significantly higher than it's been before because banks are deregulated, or internet crime is higher because, you know, people are online more and lots of stuff's there, which also means the decrease in violent crime because people carry less paid cash around with them. So, you know, it's just, it depends on what you look at, but if you have a point of view, you'll always be able to find some fact that backs it up, because points of view are based philosophically, and then the evidence could be done by cherry picking what about the world sort of fits into that, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And all like the thing where people defend like capitalism now and stuff, they bring up stuff about how, you know, people have increased freedom and stuff like that, or, you know, increased mobility and stuff like that. But that's not the same thing that people care about who care about poverty or inequality, or, you know, there's always stuff you could bring up to say that your view is right and stuff. It's like the battle of philosophy and ideas more than like a general fact-based argument for a lot of stuff.
I think I think that the if just to sort of bring it back to the whole trans thing though, is that I think that it's not something that is like potentially like philosophically an issue. like it is because it is, but like I think that the science has been done, and the reality is that the vast majority of medical professionals say that it is it is better for people who have gender dysphoria. It is better for them to transition. They live better lives. They have lower rates of suicide. Blah 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 blah. Not trans people in general, but people who actually transition and go through the process. So, like, I think that like yeah you. I think that there is obviously that aspect of it where people are like sort of allowing their feelings on the subject. Again, going back to it's strange, I don't understand it, it's weird, it's icky, so I'm going to find something that supports my thesis, and it tends to be people who have the same idea as them. And I think that like you can sort of talk about like capitalism and versus socialism or whatever, and which is a better like economic thing, and that. But I think that gets into a completely different sort of realm of like understanding. Like it's sort of like that's talking about like what's the outcome, what do you want the world to look like, as opposed to like actually going, this is what is most beneficial for these people and also most beneficial for society.
Yeah, but I think though, like, again though, like this is the thing that you to start from the premise that the people who are like TERFs, they care about the trans people, like the things you brought up about like the suicide rate being lower and stuff. If they think that the trans people are an issue for their group, i.e. trans exclusionary radical, so obviously there's different people who go against trans people for different reasons. And like if they think that the damage done by the trans people are more than the damage that society is doing to them, it kind of is an argument about society in a way, though, isn't it? Because they're seeing it as different groups against them, and that the damage limitation of damage to trans people is less than the damage that will be done to society in a whole if they, like the ridiculous argument that people make about trans rights is that if you get rid of the ones that think it means getting rid of gender completely, they're right-wing one. It is an argument about society, because their idea is then that society will collapse and that there'll be no, that's the far fringe of illogical arguments and stuff. But, that, to them it is a societal issue, and sort of the same thing with TERFs, though. They think there is a fundamental difference between radical feminism and trans people. So their viewpoint is that the bit you have quoted may be correct, that they are a necessary evil in the further, they might not even say it or be conscious of it, but to some level they must know that the people are being damaged, but they'll compartmentalize that into being less of a damage to society than it might. So if they genuinely believe that people who are trans may regret it and be miserable, if they believe that that is something that could happen widespread, or that the rights that women have been taken back, they will then see damage to trans people as a necessary evil to stop that from happening. Again, I disagree with that, obviously, and I think that it's a ridiculous viewpoint, but I think that they are coming at it from a viewpoint where they want to change society, or they want society to stay where it is, because it's a standard conservative critique, isn't it? That even if people are being oppressed now, freedom for them will lead to a greater oppression in the future. So then they must continue their oppression now to stop the greater, like, freedom. Like, again, like the argument against sort of, like with slavery or something, again, ridiculous to compare the two, but to get, you go to the nebulous thing, they were an oppressed people. A conservative argument against that at the time was that if they are free, it will lead to greater oppression in the future. So not necessarily at the point of view that's there now. It's kind of that anti-utopic vision, which is sort of the aim of essence of conservatism as a philosophy. They think that the thing that's there now is worse than the society will be if trans people destroy the gains of feminism. So I think it is a thing like that. But I also agree with you that there's no evidence to base what they're saying on, basically, other than conjecture and ridiculous stuff like that.
Yeah, well, yeah. I think that there's... Well, yeah, I think that there's also, like, there are actually, like, gender abolitionists on the left as well, which, you know, fine. I don't think it's something that is actually ever going to... Well, it's not going to go away in, like, probably even, like, our grandkids' lifetime. Like, I think it's something that is so ingrained in our you know, in our society and all that sort of thing. But yeah, I do get what you're saying though about the idea of, like, you know, the end result of the society that they want is that they're willing to sort of essentially they're willing to sacrifice trans people to build a society that they want where, you know, like, where rightly or wrongly women's rights are protected. So yeah, I do get what you're saying there.
Yeah, well, it's the same as any. If you genuinely believe in something and you think it's the only way that could happen, then you are going to suppress anything that goes against you, even if because there will be no evil that cannot be, you know, taken in the pursuit of a greater good, really, and stuff. It's the same though with people who don't believe. Like, if someone has a fixed viewpoint of what society is, and then anything that goes against that will go, you know, there will be no thing where you could cause a greater good that would then stop them from. So it's similar to the people who like believe in communism, and then they think that anything less than that is like just not worth pursuing. So you could have something like a social democracy or something that would improve the lives of millions, but they just won't do anything to get to that because they think that their viewpoint of the society is the only thing worth having. So they might, like, abstain from voting, for example, to bring about the society they want, or they would, you know, just irregard. They would say anyone who might be, I don't know, like a Bernie Sanders or something, bring about change, but not good enough change for them. So a gender abolitionist could technically support a TERF because they would say, you still believe in the idea of gender, therefore you're against the view of society I have. And then they're sacrificing again, you can bring up all the facts you want about it being negative to trans people, but that doesn't factor into their calculation of what they want the world to be. They want the world to have no gender. The people who have a gender are against that. Therefore, they can suffer in the short term for a greater future, which would liberate everyone. It's the classic, like, would you kill 1 million people now to stop climate change kind of thing. Obviously, climate change is a real thing. A genderless world is, as you say, probably, you know, I don't want to say it's impossible or something, and it's not something you should harm people for. Climate change, you know, you could make the argument realistically that it's going to kill people, so you might want to kill people now, but like that, for them, that is the same thing. A genderless society is the only thing worth going for, so you could kill people now for it, kind of thing.
The title of this is the good take. With your get out of here with your eco-fascism. But yeah,
obviously I don't believe that, but yeah, that's what I'm trying to say.
Do you want to get our subscriber base down to single digits?
Yeah, but that's okay. I'll. Is it still recording now?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was. But yeah, that's not my point of view. Obviously, I'm not an eco-fascist or a. You know, we need to. Anyone who doesn't agree with the perfect must be killed, basically. But yeah, I think it goes into the same continuum of that, basically. They see it as or again, not even the people on the left who are gender, you know, don't want a gender kind of thing. But Rowling, Glinner, they think, I don't know about Glinner because he's just an idiot, but Rowling, or a feminist who might believe in it, thinks that by having genders, you know, by bringing back the discussion on what gender is, it's harming women because then people will think of the female in regards to being womanly features, which makes the feminist gains will be lost. it's pretty indisputable that the gains of feminism since like the 70s, for example, are good. Therefore, these people are trying to take away good things. They can suffer now. So you can bring the facts that you want into it. It's just irregardless to them. You're just bringing up pointless things that don't matter to them. They might not admit to it, but by their viewpoint, they are essentially saying that you can throw everyone who's trans under a bus to keep the gains that benefit me and the world I want to see, kind of thing.
Yeah, no, I agree. I haven't heard from Chris for a while.
I've just been letting the madness play out. I need Marcus to get onto his eco-fascist viewpoints at some point. No. I mean, it's one of them things where we can wax lyrical philosophically about kind of the origins of and kind of like how turfism has come about and all that sort of stuff. I think ultimately what the takeaway should be is that what JK Rowling is ultimately doing is harming people day to day, and that's what needs to be ultimately stamped out first, I think. And how people go about that is ultimately up to it's ultimately up to them. But the ultimate goal of this is ultimately to stop what JK Rowling's doing, or try at least trying to educate people who might be sided her way to kind of think the harmful viewpoints, and try and think of ways where we can educate people about trans issues and the way that they can be supported, and then that's how you create a more equal society. So we can think like esoterically about it, but I think practically that's what the takeaway should be ultimately.
Yeah, I think you basically just sort of engaging in, I suppose, harm reduction at this point. Like, what you do is you just continue to try and educate the people around you and that sort of thing, and that's like the best you can do. Yeah, you can talk about like these, I suppose, the only benefit that you have in thinking about this sort of philosophical thing of it is trying to understand their viewpoint and potentially coming at them from that viewpoint, and sort of making them understand that like what they think is not actually going to like end in the world that they're thinking of, like what I was saying before about like trans men using women's bathrooms and that sort of thing, because that's what they want. They want biological women to use the bathroom that is for biological women apparently, and that sort of thing, and then that sort of potentially opens the door for people who are cisgendered men being able to use the bathroom, saying that they're trans men. So it's like like the like that's just one sort of argument in that this, what you are doing, what you think you're doing, is not going to end the way you think it's going to end.
Yeah, and I think just reminding people that it's not right to to throw people under a bus for esoteric beliefs and stuff. Like, yeah, there's never a situation where like the eco-fascist stuff is wrong because it's wrong. I mean, it's pointless to even like. What is the point of a world where you have to cause so much damage to get to it, kind of thing? Like, if the point of the world is to make it better, then you can't kill 1 million people to get to that. It's going to be stained in just bloodshed and stuff, isn't it?
No, that's it. Yeah, it's
worth getting a genderless society if it's based on people who believe in like. It's not worth it if it's built on the bones of dead trans people, is it?
absolutely
Yeah, no,
not.
I agree.
I don't think goes without saying. Yeah, and it's kind of what we've kind of been saying this whole time. With, as I said, that further education and engaging with people, and we could go on, I guess, but
Yeah.
we have been going on for nearly 3 hours now.
Yeah, I think that's about where we should leave it. I think we've covered all of the ground that we could possibly cover on this topic.
That's for sure.
I have one more thing to
Oh
But I was just going to say, I think that the point of why it's like people who might have that point of view, it's good for them to meet people as human beings, though, rather than just the education part of it is.
Yes.
You can't educate people away from the point of view that if they have the belief that the genderless world is the thing that they're aiming for, it's the same as, I don't know, like a racial purist or something. You know, they might see that any damage is for a white ethno state or something. But, you know, there will be no arguments against that. But they might meet somebody who is black or a trans person, and then that will be the thing that gives them the empathy to get past that point of view. You know, they're not just there in their house with an esoteric idea anymore. They have to put a face, because, you know, anyone who has that point of view is basically, you know, I can guess most of them will be the kind of basement dwelling people who don't know very many people and have, you know, created a world without human beings, essentially, without any complex. Because they don't know a lot of people, they don't see people as that. They see them as distinct groups that you can move around to create the world that you want to, you know, create, basically. So they don't know, like, you know, they don't know any trans people, they don't know any black people. They're interacting with them face to face. I think that's why that's the best. So to bring it all together, I think the reason why interacting with people is the best is because it defeats that philosophical idea. Then when you have to start putting faces to people and you can see people in your life, you can't then as easily, unless if you're some kind of sociopath, it winnows it down then to, instead of just being people who are looking at it esoterically, it's, if you have to engage in society wide, and you can't then say, oh yeah, these people who are women are all evil. If you're a, you know, what you call them, if you're an incel, you see women then as people rather than this thing that you've imagined in your head, or you see black people, if you're a racist, as people instead of that. So yeah, just to bring it all together then, I suppose, the reason why meeting people wherever you are in your society, your workplace, face to face is better, is because then it can erase that end state of perfection, because then you can see the human cost of it.
So the good take we're going to take from this is go hug a trans person.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Show them some love.
Trans lives
right.
matter.
Yes.